We want to go straight to CBS News reporter Kati Weis, who's been covering this story for us from the beginning. She is in New Orleans with more. Kati, what is the status of Bourbon Street being reopened?
Hi, well, good afternoon. You're right. Bourbon Street has just reopened within the last hour here, and we are getting the first glimpses since that horrific attack took place just a day and a half ago. It happened a little after 3 a.m. right through here, through these blocks is where the truck came through. I want to show you a little bit some of the remaining evidence that's left behind after police have already wrapped up their investigation in this area. For example, you can see here this barricade that still has just a little piece of crime scene tape on it. It's mangled and you could tell it was affected by the force of the truck that came through here at such a high rate of speed. Remember, police said that when the attacker came through here, he had an intent to try to hit as many people as possible. That's what kind of evil he had intentions of according to police. So let me show you a little bit more of kind of what we're seeing here on Bourbon Street. This is a place, if you're not familiar with New Orleans or the culture here, it's a place that's supposed to be fun, where people are carefree. As you can see, there's a lot of bars here. It's known to be a party area. It's a place where anything can happen and people feel excited, and don't have to worry about work tomorrow, for example. Unfortunately, that was all of those kinds of happy, exciting feelings of ringing in the new year very much changed in a whole different direction yesterday morning, early in the morning. You can see today a lot of people just kind of walking through, taking a look. The feeling here that's normally very happy is a little more relaxed. It's not quite as rambunctious. We got people here, though, that are still trying to feel positive, it seems, despite everything that has happened. We have a lot of state troopers that are here, lots of officials that are keeping an eye on things and trying to keep security strong for the upcoming game this afternoon, the Sugar Bowl. We're going to continue to bring you live updates. We'll send it back to you.
Kati, quickly, I do want to ask you the latest on the investigation, including that secondary location, the Airbnb that the attacker rented. What's the latest with that scene?
Yes, there's still a very active scene there. So while the FBI has cleared this scene where people were run over, the scene where the attacker had stayed at an Airbnb not too far from here, officials are still combing through that, looking for evidence. We know that they've already combed through some of his cell phones and other tech that they found and confiscated, both at his Airbnb and at his home in Texas, where he's originally from. We have crews that are analyzing both of those scenes as well to continue to bring you more updates. But as far as we know right now, officials aren't quite done looking through what kind of evidence may be left behind there.
Kati Weis, thank you. And as officials continue to investigate the New Year's Day attack in New Orleans, the city is preparing for today's college football playoff game, as Kati just mentioned, the Sugar Bowl, which was originally scheduled for yesterday evening. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry says the city is ramping up security.
I would also remind those who are in the city that as far as state resources are concerned, we have the Louisiana State Police, the Louisiana National Guard, which was part of that emergency declaration, which allowed us to put an entire MP company on the ground. Those become force multipliers, is what we call that in law enforcement in the military. That helps to add to the resources that we have.
CBS Saturday Morning co-host and national correspondent Michelle Miller is in New Orleans following this for us. So, Michelle, what more can you tell us about the security ahead of the Sugar Bowl and how it differs to what would have been in place yesterday had the attack not happened?
Well, keep in mind that the Louisiana Superdome is, in fact, a state-owned building. It's perhaps why the governor and Louisiana State Police, as well as the National Guard, are in such force here. You see the armored truck behind me. It's stationed there. There is, or was just a few moments ago, an officer, patrolman who was atop with a long gun at attention. So I would have to say that's one of the most effective deterrents that people see when they drive through, or actually now walk through this corridor, which is known as the Central Business District. the FBI and federal authorities, whilst the state, generally has they have oversight here, the federal authorities have taken over this scene. Obviously, they say, one, we are trying to assess whether or not the measures that have been taken here are adequate, but we're also looking ahead to the Super Bowl. So that means we aren't going to give you any specifics on the numbers of our special forces that are here, but we do know that they have, quote unquote, ramped up the force. What we can tell you, Louisiana State Police, as well as New Orleans Police, as well as the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office and the neighboring parish that has lent some of its teams here, have additional resources. They have mounted police. They have other patrolmen, both in uniform and out of uniform. So what they're saying is the less we tell you, the more safe that you are. At least that seems to be the message that they're pouring out, that we have it under control and we are doing what is necessary to keep this crowd safe. Look, they have a track record. The Sugar Bowl takes place here every single year for the last 3 to 4 decades. And the Super Bowl, more times played here in this city than in any other city, a total of 11. In February will be number 12. So when you think of those things, they say, despite the fact that we had this attack in the French Quarter, which is a mile away, less than a mile away, we think we have, or at least we are assessing the situation so that we know that what we're doing here is what needs to be done.
Okay, Michelle Miller, thank you so much for your time and expertise on an area that you have such a connection with, that you lived in for many years. We appreciate it. Let's go ahead and go to Rona Taran, who is here with me now in Studio 57 with analysis of this investigation. She's the executive editor of our CBS News Confirmed unit. So, Rona, we know that right now officials are piecing together a timeline. They say right now they believe that the attacker in the New Orleans case acted alone. How are they able to confirm that detail? Because yesterday, officials were pretty adamant, we're looking for anyone who was involved.
Right, exactly. So very early on in the investigation, they had reviewed CCTV cameras. So they were IED devices found in 2 separate locations on Bourbon Street. Now, they were reviewing security cameras as they went along, and they saw a number of individuals who had interacted with those IEDs, which were inside coolers. Now, obviously, they have to go through the process. They have to try to identify these people. They have now gone back through all of the cameras, and they found
up the coolers, right?
Exactly. And just to think that was an IED on the street. So they went back through those cameras and they found that Jabbar actually put them there himself. Okay. And that these were simply just innocent bystanders who were just checking out these coolers on the street, trying to figure out what they were. So as of now, as of this time, they don't believe that he acted with anybody else.
What more are we learning about the attacker? What his affiliations were, what he had posted prior to this happening, what was going on in his personal life?
So we know he served in the army. He joined in 2007. He served in active service till 2015. Now, we know when he got out, he joined the reserves, but he also went back to college. He got a bachelor's from Georgia State University. He left. He joined some consulting firms. He also worked for Deloitte, earning $125,000 since 2021. Now, how we know that about his employment at Deloitte is he actually went through a divorce as recently as 2022. He was divorced 3 times since 2012, and his most recent divorce was actually slightly acrimonious. So we know from this divorce that his wife at the time actually took out a restraining order against him. We also know from 2022 filings that he said that he was struggling with finances at the time. So he said that he was earning approximately $125,000 a year. But he pointed out monthly expenses were exceeding his monthly income. He pointed to child support he had to pay for 2 children from his first marriage. He said that he had $40,000 in credit card debt, and he was saying simply he couldn't afford some of these payments. So we know from the last few years, up until about 2022, what's more of a mystery is what happened in that time period, what caused somebody who served, as far as we know, very honourably in the army, held down a 6-figure job at a consulting firm, actually carried this out.
But we know that he wasn't on any kind of federal government watch list or system, but he had pledged loyalty to ISIS. He had an ISIS flag. What can you tell us about some of the videos that he was uploading, and do we know when he started to affiliate himself with the terror group?
So authorities actually give us a lot more details today about that. Now, we'd been scouring social media, but authorities basically said that on Facebook, he had a Facebook account. He posted 5 videos there in the hours leading up to the attack. Now, in these videos, he said he was initially intending to harm his friends and family, but he said that he wanted people to pay attention basically to the ideology behind it. Now, investigators say they believe he joined ISIS or pledged affiliation with ISIS before the summer, and that in these videos that he posted to Facebook that he pledged allegiance to that group. Now, we know from some of the investigations into his home that they had seized 3 cell phones, 2 laptops. So they're going to be looking as well into anyone he was talking to online. Was he visiting certain websites that maybe he was, consuming propaganda on? But we do know that there was that affiliation there with that terrorist group.
Let's switch gears and talk about the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. We were watching a police update on that, and it was interesting because the sheriff had said, look, there are a lot of similarities, but they might be coincidences, but they're pretty weird coincidences between the subject who they believe was inside that Cybertruck when it exploded, who had died prior of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and the New Orleans attacker. Both served in the military, in the Army, both served in Fort Bragg, which is a huge base in North Carolina, not at the same time. Both served in Afghanistan at the same time, but not in the same unit or the same province. What are they doing right now to comb together any kind of possible connection? And are there any other strange coincidences that I missed that you picked up on?
Yeah, so investigators were saying basically they're going through every lead, anything they can see that might connect these two. Now, from investigators in both states, we're not seeing anything right now, aside from a number of coincidences, like you said. Now, one other thing to note is they both use the same app, which is the Turo app, to rent electric vehicles. Now, we know from the information that we just got that in Vegas, that vehicle was rented on the 28th of December. We know in New Orleans that vehicle was rented from Texas originally on the 30th of December, so within days of each other. Now, it's also worth noting, I was looking at the Turo app. I wasn't familiar with it. It's basically like an Airbnb for cars.
Yeah, I've used it.
So, yeah, and so I was looking at their filings. So they say they have about 350 vehicles across the country for rent on this app. So, I mean, it's not
like
a small
I own a
app.
car and I rent it to you.
Exactly. Slightly like Airbnb, peer-to-peer. So 350,000 cars. So it is a smaller app, but it's also not completely obscure. So that may just be another coincidence there.
And they both used sort of explosives, although it sounds like in the Cybertruck it wasn't. Police didn't exactly answer this question. They were asked if it was really a bomb or just a bunch of different incendiary devices. They said it was a lot of fuel. And of course, in the New Orleans case, we know that they were rudimentary pipe bombs containing all kinds of very damaging stuff. Rona Taran, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much.